From CSDC, the Charter Schools Development Center.
My advice to new and veteran charter school board members is to continually reflect on why you choose this role and how your values as a board member align with the school's mission.
Welcome to Boarding Pass, your ticket to effective charter school governance. I am Catlin O'Halloran Heller, and more than 20 years ago, I got the bright idea that I was going to start a charter school. My son was in preschool, and I wanted to create a free Montessori charter school as a public education option in my small rural community. I actually said the words, I mean, really, how hard can it be? And 2 decades later, I know exactly how hard it is to build and maintain a high-quality charter school in California. So I'm going to take you down the path that I went down and help you learn everything you need to know to excel as a board member in a thriving charter school. Today, I'd like to introduce and welcome Kennedy Hilario to our show. Kennedy is the Chief Executive Officer of ACE Charter Schools in San Jose, California, where he's responsible for managing the finances, operations, compliance, and fundraising, as well as guiding the instructional recovery of the student community after the pandemic setback. Additionally, Kennedy serves as a mentor in the CSDC Leadership Intensive, where he supports rising charter leaders. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to talk with him today. Welcome to Boarding Pass, Kennedy.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. So tell me a little bit. I'd like to just sort of start off with a question about how you got involved in the work of charter schools.
So I became involved in charter schools out of a deep personal passion to make a difference in the communities similar to the ones that I grew up in. So as a child of immigrant parents from the Dominican Republic, I was raised in the inner city neighborhoods of New York City and Miami. I largely lived with my mother after the age of 9 because my parents got separated. My father worked as a taxi driver, and my mother, who was a teacher in her home country, she took jobs cleaning offices and working in factories to support my brother and I. Growing up, I faced the challenges of poverty and being a minority, navigating language and cultural barriers. My younger brother contracted meningitis at the age of 2, leaving him deaf, mute, and cognitively impaired. So this experience gave me a profound insight into the struggles of families dealing with special needs and the impact of being marginalized. But despite the challenges, I was fortunate to have many good teachers, but particularly 2, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. They were married. One was my guidance counselor, and the other one was my AP history teacher, and also the coach for the Civitan Club. And their kindness and belief in my ability just transformed my life. They saw my potential. They helped me envision at a very young age a brighter future for myself beyond the blocks that I grew up in, and they guided me towards college and success. So after years in leadership across both education and the private industry, I joined ACE because I recognized a unique opportunity to dedicate my efforts to students with complex needs. I fell in love with ACE community immediately. I identify closely with the struggles of the community. These are students from immigrant families like myself, facing financial hardship, and they're aspiring to be the first generation to attend college, which was my case. So working at ACE has allowed me to give back by supporting students like those that I knew growing up, students who have untapped potentials and they have dreams that are within their reach, and all they need is the right guidance and support. So here at ACE, we focus on nurturing each student's potential and just ensuring that they have the tools to overcome any challenges, obstacles they have.
Wow, Kennedy, that is such a powerful story. I love that story. I love how you got inspired by teachers, and then how you went on to sort of pass that through and carry that on to your students. I mean, really, that's a remarkable story. Thank you for sharing that. So tell me, so at ACE, you actually focus on recruiting students who are struggling in school, right? That's sort of your school's focus.
It is, but we do serve a diverse student body. So that includes 90% Latinos, 80% from low income background in underserved communities. And our community, our commitment to them is to provide a nurturing environment where every student can grow and thrive. Our motto is grow everyone every day. But yes, we do focus or tend to focus on those students that have struggled or basically establishing a connection in the traditional school environment, and they're looking for a place where they can call home and have a more personal relationship. But since I joined ACE, we have expanded our program to support multiple pathway after they graduate from our high school. This includes mainly college, but it also includes certifications, military, and direct workforce entry. So while we celebrate our college-bound graduates, we are proud to help all students achieve their unique goals, because 80% of our students go to college, but the other 20%, we make sure that they are also have a successful life. So if I can, I would like to share a story that shows who we are.
Yes, please do. I'd love it. Yeah.
Okay, so one powerful story is of last year's valedictorian. This young lady, she overcame a significant personal trauma. She witnessed firsthand an assassination attempt on her brother 3 years ago in her home country in Mexico. And then she and her family decided to emigrate to the United States. 3 years later, this past June, she graduated as valedictorian, fluent in English, had only spoken it for 3 years. You would have thought she'd been speaking it for 10 or 12 years. She earned a full scholarship to UC Berkeley.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. What a life changer. I mean, life changer for sure. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it demonstrates the profound impact that ACE has in terms of like the relation. Our magic is really the relationship that our teachers and the staff form with that student, and that relationship is what we use to transform kids' life.
And that sounds like it mirrors in some ways your own experience of finding that couple, those teachers who also connected with you in that way. And I know, lots of people have those remarkable stories about teachers who connect with them. I had a fifth grade teacher that I felt like identified me and said, you can do more than you think you can do, right? And that just makes you feel so proud to know that an adult really sees you like that. And that's incredible. That's congratulations to your valedictorian. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And the key is that you remember these folks years, decades down the line, right? I mean, and they literally, just because they care, they could transform your life.
Yes,
it's amazing.
Absolutely. So in the structure of charter schools, of course, getting a little more into the technical, into the weeds of how we make this magic happen, right? We have to have charter school boards. And I'm curious to know, especially in a school as unique as yours with such powerful impact, how do you prepare your new board members for the job of being on a board, even knowing what's required on a board? Do you have an onboarding process for them? Do you make them attend a few meetings so they know what they're getting into? How do you get them ready for their first meeting?
We do. We actually have a process for onboarding new board members, and actually, it's very similar to the onboarding norms that are published or outlined in the quick guide by the Charter School Development Center. And we follow it, and it ensures a very comprehensive structural approach. So we start with our board chairman. He takes on the role of a mentor for each new member. And so, for instance, he introduces the new member to the school's culture, expectations, and protocols for effective communication within the board. They also encourage the new member to participate in school tours and community events, which gives them firsthand insight into the ACE experience. It helps them connect with staff, students, and families. In addition to that mentorship, I personally meet with each board member early in their onboarding process to provide my support, answer any questions, and I give them a thorough understanding of their role and responsibility during meetings. So first of all, I provide a binder. So in this binder, we have like key governance documents, such as the bylaws and the articles of incorporation, which kind of lays the foundation for the governance structure of ACE. Then I provide them with board minutes. It includes minutes from past few years to help them kind of understand the recent board discussions and decisions, kind of provide context for ongoing projects and initiatives. I provide, and this one I really put a lot of time into providing talking points for fundraising, because our board takes an active role in fundraising, and they're a cornerstone to the fundraising strategy.
Sure.
So I supply board members with board approved talking points that are very helpful when they speak to potential funders and partners. And then academic enrollment data, I'll probably give more than I should, but I share PowerPoint presentations and reports that highlight the academic performance. They compare A's to the local schools, to the district, and to state averages. This could include metrics on student achievement, graduation rates, college acceptance rates, and just to give them an understanding of our successes and areas for improvement. Strategic plan is another key document I provide to include the current strategies. Obviously, this is a roadmap that shows them what are the long-term goals and what are the key challenges for the organization for ACE. And then I also coordinate with our IT department to ensure that each board member receives an official ACE email. That makes it easier for them to communicate with the team and also access the board-related information, keeps it separate, keeps it secure.
Yes.
And then basically through this comprehensive process, our goal is to equip each new board member with the tools, the knowledge, and the confidence that they need in order to contribute effectively to our mission and to governance.
Yeah, Kennedy, that's textbook perfect. I mean, I'm so glad I invited you on the show to talk about it because you're doing all the right things. I love that you supply those foundational documents right up front because people, I think, come in sometimes to boards not knowing, oh, you have an agreement with the school district to provide back office support or special ed, or they don't even know that when they come in as a board member. And the role of mentorship, I think, is so important. And then them having the accessibility, like you said, through email and through meetings with you to you and to your school community, and just keeping those emails separate. The other day I had a technical assistance question from someone, and all their board members use their own personal email addresses. And I said, here's the problem with that. I said, the problem with that is, right, don't do it, because if there's ever a Public Records Act, they also get to find out what else is going on in your life because they want everything that's out of your email. And so have a separate one that you only do school business on, and that nobody has to see all your TikTok and Instagram posts, because
right.
those all stay separate.
And we live in an area where public record requests are just a common practice, and they happen repeatedly throughout the year.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of schools feel that and have that happen. So yeah, making sure those email addresses are separate is so important. So I'm glad you're doing it. So you've got your board. How many people are on your board, Kennedy?
8.
So that's a big board. That's a full-size board there. Yeah. So you've got your board members, and do you have a process with your board president where you meet with them before meetings, before the board meetings, or your board chair? Do you meet with them ahead of time?
Yes, we do before the board. I mean, we do have a process where we meet before the board, before the meeting, and we review the agenda.
Yeah.
For sure. But what I do basically is that I first create the agenda based on any financial compliance or operational requirements that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I create the draft, and then I circulate it by the entire board, and it basically I ask if they have anything they want to add in addition, and so that kind of makes sure that it's addresses the current needs that we have, but also any questions or any needs that the board may have. So it's very flexible. And then I review that with the board chair to make sure I get his input, and then we send it out.
And so if one of your 7 board members who's not the board chair wants to add something to the agenda, they know when that time is and when they're able to communicate with you about that ahead of time?
Absolutely. Yes.
That's great. Yeah, it's important. I think sometimes board members aren't familiar with how to do that, but it sounds like your comprehensive onboarding process probably covers that for them as well. So that's great.
Yeah.
So has your board ever worked together to create board meeting norms? So expectations in terms of how the board meeting would run and what they're supposed to be doing and how they are supposed to behave toward each other. Have they ever created those?
They did. I mean, I have a seasoned board, and they have been through strategic planning together, and they also created board norms even before me coming here. So absolutely. So basically, we circulate, the norms for a meeting. Listen to each other, listen intently. Don't make assumptions, and be cordial. And then, allow people to speak, and then also so just the basic civil rules of civility.
Sure.
Um, but then also just that they understand that another key guide that we've used for them in creating norms is the Robert's Rule of Order,
Uh-huh.
uh, which is kind of it's a really small book. It's about 170 pages, but really more like an 80 page because it's a very small book.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks about the roles of the presiding officer and the secretary. It talks about quorum. So it talks about standard order of business and when to introduce each and how to handle each piece. It talks about the agenda. It talks about how to adjourn a meeting. So it gives you all the rules and how to
Mm-hmm.
make a motion, how to ask for a motion, how to second a motion.
Right.
So I think every board member is given that training, and so they
Great.
kind of come to the meeting kind of with an expectation of how the meeting is going to run. They attend several meetings before they even select it.
Right.
They're invited, so they kind of see how the meeting runs. So it's by the time they attend their first meeting, they have a very clear expectation of what the norms are,
Yeah.
and how the board is going to proceed. Typically, the piece that we struggle with is the time, because our board meetings are about an hour and a half, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty quick meeting. The board chairman likes to run very crisp meetings, but there are times that because of you may be handling a critical topic or you're into a closed session doing negotiations, that your meeting can run over an hour and a half. So for me, the struggle is how do I keep the meetings crisp,
Sure.
and so that honor the people's time and commitment because they come to us. They're very busy people.
Right.
I want to make sure that I don't abuse their time and their commitment.
Yeah, no, I think having a focus on that is important. Like you said, there's going to be times when it goes over because there's important things on the agenda or because there's just more discussion. You're deliberating as a board. But really, to keep those board meetings short. When I was on the traditional school board, we had some really long meetings, like 5.5 hours. And at that point in time, nobody's even paying attention. I mean, you're just looking at the clock. So, those were some rough ones. But sounds like you guys do a great job of really, and again, if you have your meeting expectations, folks know how to interact through the Roberts Rules of Orders or the Rosenberg Rules of Orders, one of those, sort of guidelines. And then you have your norms, you have your agenda, you have your rules of order. Those things can move pretty quickly and crisply through. And I think that's important to get the work done and get folks, onto their next task, whatever else they're doing after that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have attended some board meetings where I've seen, I would say, some of our authorizers board meeting, where I've seen they can kind of get derailed, and they've gone into starts at 5 p.m. and they go into 12 o'clock, 1 a.m.
That's
right?
exactly what I'm talking about. That's what I had to survive.
So,
Exactly.
but I think that as a charter school, you also want to limit the turnover, right? And so I really think it's incumbent. You do that two ways. One, I am very transparent, so I communicate a lot, so I give them current. So I'm not wasting the time at a meeting bringing people up to date on things that are not critical for decision making.
Right.
So make sure that the board is very well informed through periodic updates in between board meetings. They're getting lots of information one way,
Right.
so we violate the Brown Act law. But also, so when we do come, I make sure these decisions are, they get all the information ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
the background as well, any reports they need, any document. And then we just have very, clearly defined decision points. And we make sure that we present the topic of discussion succinctly, and that we move towards discussion and then resolution. So I think if you do that, and it takes a lot of work.
Yes.
On our side, but it's a responsible thing to do, and also make sure that yes, you're not always going to be able to have 1.5 hour board meetings, but if you can limit them to 2 hours, and sometimes you could have maybe a 1 hour board meeting. I think it helps remember the volunteers, they're not getting paid for this.
Right.
And you want really good people, and those are very busy people.
Right.
So anything you can do to honor their time and to make sure that they're fully informed before coming to the meeting, I think helps them stay engaged and want to continue to be part of this board meetings.
Yeah, no, that's great advice and great guidance. I think it takes that planning. It also takes discipline. You have to have, board members who are willing to just be succinct about what their comments are and maybe not comment on everything, right? You have to have that sort of piece of it too. And it sounds like you guys have a good combination of all of those things. And so when you want to discuss a larger topic, like you talked about strategic planning, do you do a board workshop? Do you do something on a Saturday or that you know is going to be longer than the hour and a half meetings? And what sort of topics do you discuss? Is that where you did your strategic planning, or what else do you do in board workshops?
Yeah, we have done it that way, but for sure, yeah, we definitely have these long full day board meetings where it's strategic planning, and you have a lot of team building, culture building, and so and that those happen on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
We also have periodic workshops and training sessions for board members, typically conducted by legal experts
Mm-hmm.
such as yourself. Experts from Charter School Development Center.
Mm-hmm.
They cover essential topics such as conflict of interest policies, the Brown Act compliance.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, periodically we review foundational documents such as the bylaws
Mm-hmm.
to ensure that they remain up to date and align with ACE's mission and legal obligations. So again, the workshops are designed to keep the board informed of legal requirements and best practices.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, I think sometimes there's a misconception about what board workshops are. It sounds like you guys do all the things you need to do in the board workshops, which is great. And, and like you said, sort of circling back to the crisp board meeting, I think that it gives your board members some assurance that your regular board meetings are going to be an hour to 2 hours, maybe, but that every now and then for something, in order to be compliant with the Brown Act, in order to do the longer term work that you need, you're going to hold a board workshop. And it sounds like you guys make good use of that. So that's great. That's great. And then does your board have standing committees? Or do you just do sort of some schools do standing committees, some schools do ad hoc committees, some schools do just sort of a CEO's work group. Do you have those kind of committees, and how do board members get selected or appointed to those?
Yeah, so we have had all three of those, but currently we do have three key standing board committees: the Finance Committee, the Audit Committee, and the Academic Performance Committee.
Okay.
Those are standing committees. We had an ad hoc committee for last year around enrollment, and that lasted for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have advisory groups. So we used to have the Development Committee, and that was replaced with the Fund Development Group that advises me, the CEO, on an adjunct basis in order to allow more flexibility, so you don't have to follow the Brown Act law. You can
Right.
schedule meetings, because otherwise it gets really hard to conduct fundraising if you have to schedule everything 3 days in
Right.
advance and all that. So we actually have used all three of them.
Oh, that's great. There's a lot of good tools out there. And I think as long as people understand the rules for each one, what topics you can discuss, and all of that, I think that they're all really useful to getting the work of the board done. Yeah, that's great. And so when you're recruiting board members, do you have a formal process for that? You were talking about the process in terms of onboarding where they attend the board meetings, but do you have a process? Do people submit an application? Do you all go looking for folks? How do you recruit your board members, and what's that process like?
Well, so currently we're not growing, but as you noted, we have 8 board members, which is large. And believe it or
Yes.
not, when I came here, we had 10 board members.
Wow, even
Uh,
larger. Yeah.
and our bylaws call for 13 board members, right? So I think initially the board was formed where the executive director or the CEO was leaning heavily into fundraising
Mhm.
as the purpose for the board.
Mhm.
But it didn't quite materialize that way. I think as we've gone through the last 25 years in charter, with more compliance, the key role of a board should be governance, the
Mhm.
fiduciary
Mhm.
responsibilities of that board. But even the fundraising is still important, it's still part of it. But for me, basically, I do 95% of the fundraising is done by me. I
Yeah.
fundraise. If I'm not including grants, it's just private money is about $1.1 million, right?
Wow.
The board contributes about 100,000 of that.
Mhm.
So because of that, I'm actually in the process of changing our bylaws in order to, instead of having a board of 9 to 13, to have a board range of 5 to 8 board members. So 8
Yeah.
would be the maximum.
Mhm.
And the reason we do that is we want to kind of fall back in line with best practice. And so much larger charter networks than ACE and school districts and county boards operate with five board members, right? And maybe one more for a student seat. So this allows more flexibility in terms of scheduling board meetings
Right.
and board alignment and achieving quorum. And it's just a lot easier to operate. But yes, we do have a process where our board identifies prospects based on the board's current needs, the expertise that the board may need. For example, do we need financial
Right.
expertise? We're very lucky we have two partners of CPA firm. So our financial needs are covered, legal needs, fundraising needs. So depending on the need, then we would look for that. And so the board actually goes and looks for candidates. They're invited to several board meetings. After several months of informal communication, if there's still interest on both sides, then the board proceeds to a formal nomination, and then they vote them in as an official board member in the next board meeting.
Like all of your other processes, Kennedy, you guys do it exactly the right way. All of the things that you should be doing, all the things we recommend as a best practice. That's fantastic. And I am glad you're revising your board, your bylaws. I think, it's like you said, just even reaching a quorum sometimes when you have a bigger board can get difficult. If folks get busy or it's around the holidays or whatever, and you just can't get them there. So hopefully it'll be a little more manageable if you get to that 5 to 8 range as opposed to 13. That's a lot. So what, a couple of questions for you, and then we'll wrap up here. But what else should our listeners know before they attend their first board meeting? I assume that some of our listeners are, very first-time board members getting ready. What should they know before they go in?
Well, Catlin, that's a great question. So for a new board member, I think they should prioritize spending time with the executive director or the CEO before the first board meeting. Building the relationship with the charter leader is essential. So as one of the board's most important role is to recruit, hire, and evaluate the school leader. So if a CEO or ED is already in place, then the focus is going to shift to providing a meaningful, actionable feedback. So in order to do this effectively, I think that they need to meet with the CEO to understand the leader's personal connection and motivation. So take time to learn from the CEO's personal story, their aspiration, what motivates them in their role. This personal insight kind of builds trust, and it's going to enhance your ability to work together towards achieving the school mission. You should also try, the new board members should try to understand and align themselves to the organizational priorities. So kind of engage in discussions with the CEO and ensure that the priorities of the CEO are aligned with the board's strategic plan and long-term goals. Maybe ask the CEO what for support, or what maybe the support that they need. Just proactively ask the CEO what could they need, what could they benefit, what kind of maybe the expertise that they could lend to the CEO. They should familiarize themselves with foundational documents like we talked about earlier, the bylaws, the charter agreements. They should try to gain insight into the evaluation process. Again, one of the key things that you're going to do is evaluate the CEO. And if you don't do that correctly, you could either not be holding the CEO accountable and then and kind of impacting negatively the organization because the CEO is not being held accountable. Or you could not truly understand the CEO and have a good connection and maybe disillusion the CEO or not build that relationship as strong, and then you can have turnover, right? So you really want to understand what is the right evaluation, and there's the Charter School Development Center has a template that's a very good one that I like particularly. And so make sure that you look at all the areas of the CEO responsibilities, and then you evaluate them and give them the adequate weight. So it's just really critical. There's so many hats that a school leader has to wear, and then understanding what they are, and it gives you proper context to do a good evaluation. And then just participate, I think, in board trainings, right? Attend any available training sessions on topics like board responsibility, charter school law, financial oversight. So this is going to equip the board member to not, just provide them more knowledge to be better informed when they're making decisions.
That's fantastic. And that's great advice. Also very comprehensive advice, which is fantastic just in terms of, knowing what you're getting into. And like you said, building that relationship and understanding your role as someone in governance, as opposed to someone in management of a school, right? So you're helping set those goals and evaluating the lead administrator. And that's a really important role of boards. So making sure you know that is great. Fantastic going in. So last question for you today. What words of wisdom or words of encouragement would you offer new and even veteran charter school board members? You know the work that it takes, you know the commitment that it takes. So how would you encourage them if they're starting on this journey?
So, Kathleen, again, that's a great question because I really believe that my advice to new and veteran charter school leaders or charter school board members is to continually reflect on why you choose this role and how your values as a board member align with the school's mission. Like, ask yourself if you're ready to commit your time, your resources, and your talent to serve students, the families, and underserved community, and build a strong connection with the school community, right? It's not just about governance. It's about becoming a part of a family with a shared purpose. Embrace ongoing learning and be open to new ideas. As the charter school governance, as they bring and face unique challenges, you need to remember that every decision you make should prioritize the student's success and well-being. So when there's conflict, which there's going to be plenty, when there's disagreement, which there's going to be plenty, when you're not aligned with the CO, you're not aligned with the staff, you're not aligned with your board, your colleague, your board members, your fellow board members, you have to come back to the student. You have to come back to the student, put them first, then put the parent, then put the staff, right? If you do that in that order, you're going to come down on the right decision for that school, for that community. So your commitment and curiosity is going to have a long lasting impact. The board members that I love the most are these very experienced board members, but they're very humble and they're always curious about the people, the students, the work. I mean, they come in and they make the students and the families feel valued, unique, and just like truly appreciated. And for me, that's the board member that you want to be if you want to make an impact.
Absolutely. I love that advice, Kennedy. And I think that, like you said, putting student success first as sort of a North Star when you're making decisions and heading that direction. How do we get there? That's such great advice. And it sounds like in your situation, you've really had some success with that because your students, like your valedictorian, just have such remarkable success stories. So thank you. Thanks for all the work that you do. And thank your board for us. I mean, it sounds like they're a great group. So that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
This has been Boarding Pass from CSDC, the Charter Schools Development Center. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts, and share this podcast with your charter school board friends. And don't worry if you didn't get it all, we took notes for you. View today's show notes at chartercenter.org/boardingpass. Thanks as always to Greg Hall, Mike Watson, Melissa Cabral, and today's guest, Kennedy Hilario. We'll see you next time on Boarding Pass.
Now that you've got your boarding pass to effective charter school governance, why not upgrade to first class? By becoming a member of the Charter Schools Development Center, you'll gain year-round access to expert guidance, cutting-edge resources, and a network of experienced charter advisors. CSDC membership is your fast track to excellence in charter school governance, offering personalized support and professional development opportunities that will help you and your school soar to new heights. Go to chartercenter.org/membership to learn more.